I don't see this as an award for me, really, because I'm just the face, in some ways, the avatar of a massive team of incredible, brilliant scholars, most of whom are Uyghur, most of whom have lived experience of oppression and even forced labor in the Uyghur region. And so like what I think I'm most excited about in the work that we do is giving opportunities for Uyghurs to do this work, to exercise their rage in some ways through research, which is how a lot of us do this work, right? And to have a difference and to have a platform for their thoughts and ideas. This award is for that whole team. It's for everybody. I grew up in southern Louisiana, where the economy, the history, our lives, our realities are so very much still entangled with the history of slavery. And I know that as a white person who grew up in Louisiana, I benefit from that. I'm privileged because of that history. And I also know that as a young person, I always assumed that if I had lived at a time when there was slavery or forced labor, I would have been I believed I would have been one of the abolitionists, right? That I would have been kicking down doors and doing things. When you learn about this in junior high, you always assume you're one of the good guys. And so when I learned about this and I realized that I was just buying stuff and living my life as if there was no such thing as slavery or forced labor anymore, I was embarrassed and upset, and especially because I was working specifically on the history of slavery. And so it completely changed my life. And since then, I've done a whole lot of work to try to look at the mechanisms that make forced labor possible in the 21st century, to work especially closely with survivors of forced labor, and to do projects on worker voice and survivor narratives and things like that, to use the platform that I have and the privilege that I have to amplify the voices of the people who are most affected by the radical inequality in our global economy. Fast forward to 2017, and people that we knew, people that my husband worked with, started disappearing. And we would get these calls about people being gone, family members being missing. And, my partner became very active in trying to amplify the voices of Uyghurs whose family members were going missing. And I was just sort of in the background, like making spreadsheets and writing tweets and trying to do administrative stuff that I knew were part of organizing. Then in 2019, when it became clear that the crisis in the Uyghur region was really sort of centrally turning on a massive system of forced labor, I came to realize that I could do something using my forced labor research expertise and skills to address this issue, which was central to actually my husband's work as a historian of the Uyghur region. And since we lived there, I had some background on the issue, and I was able to then sort of launch into doing this work because I knew the Uyghur region in a way that most people who worked on forced labor didn't. For so long, people who've been working on the Uyghur region and Uyghur people have felt abandoned by the rest of the world. And these issues that are happening in the Uyghur region now, they didn't come out of nowhere. It wasn't a sudden crisis. This has been a long building crisis that a lot of people have been calling attention to. And to see all of the labor rights and anti-trafficking organizations rally and get together and really make change, it was extraordinary to watch. I think one of the things that I've learned from doing this work is that we as individuals have a lot more power in the world than we think we do. I do think it's our responsibility to buy less stuff. Just buy less stuff and buy used clothes and buy recycled goods and be conscientious about where the things we buy come from, and educate ourselves about workers and what their lives are like, right? I think that we all have a responsibility to do that, and it's our hunger to keep buying cheap and as many cheap things as possible that propels companies. But I've also noticed that that governments and companies do listen. They are listening. Their ears are to the ground for what we think and what we want. While I think that all of us feel impatient for change to happen sooner, I think that a lot of change has happened that at an unprecedented rate. Like so quickly, we've gotten governments around the world to pay attention, consumers to be concerned, businesses to shift their supply chains, and this stuff is happening at just a phenomenal rate. And it's because people set aside all of that petty squabbling and all of their resource hoarding and came together and just said, we cannot abide by this. And it's for me, it's incredibly humbling and motivating to be able to work in collaboration with people like that. The people I've worked with at Human Trafficking Legal Center are incredible. They seem to be tireless. I'm sure sometimes they're tired, but I never see it. And they are really just wholeheartedly committed to helping people. They're not just working on an issue. They're not just, ideas people. They're doing people. And they're people who are really committed and connected to assisting survivors of forced labor and human trafficking, to figuring out all the different tools we have at our disposal to make change for people. And they're just ready to nerd out on what we can do. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with Martina or Anasia, or folks, other folks who work there, about what they're just sort of brainstorming, how can we affect change the most effectively, the most efficiently, the most strategically, and that kind of level of brain power, really committed to a cause, to the humans that are affected by these crises and issues. It's super inspiring and exciting. So I love working with Human Trafficking Legal Center, but it also means the world to me to think that they like working with me.